Hi, City Life family. It's good to be here this morning, Sunday morning, and we're recording a subject today which has been obviously going through the whole world and started in May under the George Floyd issue in terms of racism. And we thought we were going to be speaking about it as a church, a City Life church. I want to introduce you to my two pastors who are associated with this church. First of all, I want to introduce you to Anthony Nicholson, and he's a white British Sheffield-born pastor. And we've also got beside us, we've got Terence Williams, who is also he's a Caribbean and a black Caribbean descent as well. We were going to talk about this subject because we thought we'd be open about it. We are a multicultural church and we embrace multiculturalism in our church. And we just want to portray an exceptional way of talking about this subject and being very, very open about this subject. I'm from an Asian background, so I'm mixed race as well, Portugal, English, Persian and Indian as well. So I'm just going to turn and ask some of these guys their experiences in terms of racism. First of all, I want to turn to Pastor Terence Williams and just ask Terence, what have you thought about the last few weeks in terms of what we've seen in terms of the George Floyd, and obviously that's perpetuated all the way through England as well?
To see some of the scenes, it's quite shocking actually, to see a man held down on the floor, and then with somebody kneeling on his neck. I was taking a dog for a walk the other day, and I remember somebody saying, "Oh, it's a tragedy what's happening." He says, "If that was an animal, we wouldn't do that." You know, you just think, but this is a human being, and people know that it's wrong. We do know it's wrong. Doesn't matter. Yeah. It's a human being. It's wrong, and he was even though shouting out, and people see that, and I think probably that's what's really infuriated people actually in that kind of situation, and seeing it, and it's just fueled something within them.
But being from the background that you've come from, Black Caribbean, do you think that's affected your race in that sense?
I think it's because it's been going on for such a long time in America, and it's just like people saying enough's enough, and they're just saying basically it shouldn't be treated that way. Basically, it should be nobody should be treated that way in that sense. But it sounds like because it's a lot of black people said it's happening to too many black people, young black men. I think that's the whole situation. We're thinking enough's enough, and that's what they're trying to say. It's not fair. It's not right. It shouldn't be happening.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. Pastor Anthony, what do you think of the situation in the last few weeks? What's your perspective, being a British-born Sheffield white guy? Also part of the greater team in City Life.
For me, it's sickening. I've been involved in multicultural church for many years, and it's appalling to see that people are not recognised for who they are as people, instead of judged by their skin colour. I think it's an absolute disgrace. I grew up in a council estate on the outskirts of Sheffield, and from a young age I didn't know any black people. I didn't know any Muslim people, but I just used to get along with anybody,
right,
irrespective of the culture, the background, or the colour of the skin. So I think it's crazy. Yeah.
So what about your upbringing, Terence? How was there anything that came against you as being a black Caribbean?
It's funny when you think about it, when looking back, I remember somebody saying, my parents never talked about it. What they went through. It's funny, it's strange when you looking back, thinking it never was in the home. But even though we did experience it on the street that we lived on, it was a street where everybody knew each other.
Right.
You always get one family. All that. So that's what we had.
Right.
And they used to say things, we used to chase them.
Right. Okay.
But if I saw them today, but what I've learned as well, even though it's a Christian home, and you've got to find God for yourself, and I had to. And it's that scripture in Matthew 7. In Matthew 7 it says, treat others how would you like them to treat you?
Right, yeah.
And that, to me, when you think about it, so really, I've got to do something first.
Yes.
If I want people to accept me and to love me and to appreciate me, then I've got to do that first.
Right.
And I think that's a powerful scripture when you think about it. And it's not whether you're Christian or non-Christian, it's for everybody.
Right.
And my parents, the house was open.
Mm.
And I think that's what I've learned, to be open
Right.
to whosoever.
Yeah.
And I try and bring that in church, work, wherever I go.
Yeah.
And because that's what I've learned from them.
Right.
And that's what I try to do, that's what the scripture says. I want people to appreciate me.
Yeah.
And if they've got a problem, tell me.
Yeah.
I ain't got a problem with that.
Yeah.
And I think they should be able to say, okay, but this is me.
Yeah.
And if you can't accept me, well, there's nothing I can do about it.
No.
You know, I can't change who I am. This is how God has made me.
Yeah.
And I accept you.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be, actually.
I think that you made a good point there. I remember growing up in 1968 when we came over from France to England, and it was different for me because I was kind of called names verbally, you know, and it really didn't affect me that much, and even beaten up, you know. And I remember this gang called the Healy Gang, you know. I mean, they used to chase us down the road, and it was I thought it was quite fun, really, to be honest with you, until one day one of the gang put a firework through our letterbox, you know. And fortunately, we had a box in our letterbox, you know, on our letterbox, so the fire went just in the letterbox itself. But it's funny mentioning the biblical point of view, because the commonality between all of us here as pastors, we're all pastors and we're all a part of the same church, is that we have a Jacob's Well. You know, it's a place where you know, there is a meeting ground between us, and what's common between us is Christ and how Christ would act. And it's not about the skin, and it's about the sin. You know, that man kneeling on someone's neck is inhumane. I think we can agree on that. You know, what person would kneel on somebody's neck and then expect that person to live if they're going to stay there for a long time? So, I think it's more to do with inhumanity than it is to do with sometimes the skin color as well. How do you feel, Anthony, that during the time when you were growing up, and did you ever see in Sheffield, I mean, you were brought up here in Sheffield, you know, so probably pretty white area, I would have thought, being brought up. How do you feel? Was there much racism going on in Sheffield?
Absolutely. I mean, the working class area, it was pretty the norm, and I think it was just ignorance rather than people being negative or racist in their heart. It was just the norm. There wasn't a lot of black people around, so, you know, it was just the thing that people said, the racist joke, the racist mindset, really. And as I was growing up, I got into the modernist movement, which was all about black music. It was the Northern Soul, it was ska music, the Caribbean, and I got heavily into that scene. And I loved the black music. I loved it. The whole scene was great. But during the mid-80s, the fascists got involved, and BNP, the National Front, and that's when I decided this isn't not for me. This is not for me. How can you dance to that music?
Right.
You're racist. It was crazy. So I just couldn't get my head around that. So I came away from it before it really got established, and thankfully now, although that you'll always get somebody with that point of view, the scene's cleaned up a lot and gone back to its roots.
I think sometimes there's a difference between racism and being prejudiced, because, you know, we can be prejudiced against somebody in our own family, for example, just because they wear white socks and you wear black socks, or you wear blue socks and they wear yellow socks, you know, and you can have that prejudicial bias, should I say, you know, and everybody has a bias of some. Everybody likes to lean towards some way or the other. But when you come to the word racism, you're really inciting hatred, isn't it? It's a word, when you hear it, you know, but you're racist, you know. It's a word which is really kind of, you know, you hear it and you know it's a derogative word. It's a terrible word, you know. And I think we got to be careful, don't we, in this day and age, when someone is just, like I think Anthony mentioned it, a bit naive, I mean, when I first came to this church, someone said to me, "You're not white," and I thought, well, I mean, they're not racist by saying that. What they were saying is that you're not English, and you must come from a different country. So we got to be careful we don't take certain things personal because of naivety, and I think that's the other side of the coin, because of the color of our skin. But what about you, Terence? Did you ever experience, racism in a big way later on in your teenager? Did people ever want to bully you or hurt you or?
Yeah, I think it's always been there, actually. I think I've only had one fight at school. It's good, because you made a racist comment. And even in my work, because I work with young people, and that's quite challenging, because one young person, he actually spat in my face and said a racist comment. And
right,
think, wow,
okay, that's
wow,
extreme.
And things like that. But then, I think working with young people is a challenge, because you never know what some of those issues. So what we do is we challenge it. So maybe somebody with a disability. So we say, okay, we challenge that, saying, right. We say, right. And what we did is, like somebody said, anything that disability, we said, right. We hired a wheelchair. We said, right, sit in that wheelchair and go shopping. And tell me your experience. And when they did, they thought, wow.
Right, okay, wow.
So we try, and that's what we do. So it's a racist comment.
Yeah.
We try and teach them.
Brilliant.
Because what we did is we
that's
gave them
the
some
key,
of our
isn't it?
Caribbean food,
Right.
the dumpling, the rice,
Yeah.
and saltfish. And they went, ew. I said, you haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
Once they tried it, they think, wow.
Yeah,
And that's what we try and teach.
you're right, okay. Yeah.
Because I think it's got to come from the young people.
Yeah.
And if we can teach them,
Yeah.
that's great. And then they can back to the families. But I remember my son, when they've had it at school. If something's a problem, I try and sort it out. So one day, the twins, and they lived up our road.
Right.
And they went to the same school as my son. I went to the house saying, excuse me, your son has put chewing gum on my son's, what are you going to do about it? And basically, she didn't get her son saying, right, will you apologize? She didn't say anything. So I'm thinking, you can see where things can come from.
Right,
From the
okay,
family,
okay.
or from the parents.
Can I just interrupt you? Do you think? I mean, I've heard some comments. I don't hear it that often now. Some people think because of their colour skin, they won't get jobs or they won't get into a certain line of work. I mean, I'm reading. I mean, this is the strangest thing about it. I'm reading what the government statistics in terms of employment occupation. And it actually says in professional jobs, it actually says Asians are 27%. And then going down the line, it talks about Pakistani, Bangladesh, Asian others. And then it comes to black people who are 21%. And then in terms of professional jobs, the lowest is white, it's just 23%. So I've heard comments, people say to me, oh, it's because of the colour of skin I didn't get my job. Do you think that's true these days?
I think it's yes and no, because I've heard some people saying who've qualified, they've got a degree, and both, a white person and them have applied for the same job, and she got it when they didn't, So it does happen. For me, I find it I've learned to be me. If I'm passionate about something, it will show.
Right, okay.
And I think, for me, that's
so the character comes out more than anything else. Yeah.
I love working with young people.
Yeah.
So it's passion.
Wow, okay.
So I will, because the last job I went for, and I thought, would I get it? Teaching kids and things like that. I thought, okay,
Right.
I'm just blind. But when I gave an interview, I said, every young person, you've got to find out, if there's a problem, you've got to find out what the problem is.
Right.
And try and help them and encourage them in whatever way. So I'm passionate about that.
Okay.
And I think if your passion comes out and just being who you are, not, right, okay, I've got to be like this. No, just be who you are.
Yeah.
And that's all I've done, just being who I am.
Wonderful.
I enjoy what I'm doing.
Okay.
And then I try and do that from my whole work. Whether it's in
Wonderful.
church, whether it's in work, I love what I'm doing.
Right.
And I think that's what should come out. And if they've got a problem, they're thinking, well, what have I done? I've done this, I've done that, I'm being obedient, I'm serving, I'm happy what I'm doing. And if somebody has got a problem, you're thinking, tell me, and I can try and put it right.
Okay. So let me ask another question and point to you, Anthony. Do you think, I mean, looking at all the denominations, say in this country, in the United Kingdom, and looking at the level of ethnic people who are in higher level positions? You know, do you think there's an issue in churches? I mean, we are obviously multicultural, which is a phenomenal thing, you know. But do you think there is do you think there's some kind of, I wouldn't say racism, that'd be too harsh, but kind of a prejudice for more ethnic people to get to a higher level in denominations? Do you think?
What I've found is that there seems to be a clique in the churches. You seem to have your black churches, you
Right.
seem to have your Indian churches, your
Right.
Spanish churches, your Chinese churches, and that there's room for that, because if you're not good if you're not good at English and you need to be around your own people, that makes sense. Of course it
Yeah,
does. But
yeah.
the kingdom of heaven is multicultural. We're not going to get to heaven and find, Jamaican, yeah, you're over there. White British, right, you're over there. Chinese, that's your section over there. The Bible says that there's only one family in heaven and on earth. And until we get to understand that and take that to heart, then the church can never become the full potential on earth that God's called it to become.
Yeah.
There's nothing better that I like. In fact, I feel completely out of my comfort zone when I go to a completely Caucasian church where there's only white people. I
That's
much
interesting.
prefer the diversity of seeing
Yeah.
different faces. I love national costume. We in this church have the International Food Night. There's so many different colours, there's so many
Yeah.
nationalities, so many different languages. And that to me is part of the culture of heaven. And it's wonderful to see. So I would prefer to see more multicultural churches, not for the sake of being called multicultural,
No.
but for the point of the kingdom of heaven, that we can all come together in unity with one heart.
Yeah.
The Bible says in Romans, it says that the one thing that we have, the one debt that we should owe is the debt of love.
Yeah.
You see, if we don't have love, we are not in unity.
Yeah.
So, we can look at denominationalism, but the reality is, if we have not love, then
Exactly,
we don't have God
exactly.
in our hearts.
And I think there's a good point that, like I've said in my preaching, is that it's Christianity that comes first. We are Christians first, and then we are brown second. We are Christians first, and then we are white second. We are Christians first, and we are black second. And so the adjective is the Christianity, the noun is the black, white, and brown. I think that's the key, But if we put black before, or white before, or brown before, the problem happens is that then we try to get our culture to suit the Christianity. And I think that's one of the key problems that we try to do. And, we should love our identity. We should love being white. We should love being... I can remember, I think I was up to after the age of 20 that I actually embraced my mixed race. Before that, I was embarrassed of it. In fact, I brought out the English more out of me so I wouldn't get bullied as much, But now I just embrace it. I love it. I think, this is me. I'm a mixed blood, race person, a senior pastor for a church of a multicultural group of people who loves diversity, And I think it's one of the key things that we should remember, that we are Christians first before the colour of our skin. And I pray that other churches understand that and embrace that as well and welcome people into it. I also think, based on that question, is that we can be exclusive. Do you not think so?
Yeah, absolutely. You see, unless we start to get involved with different culture, we can't embrace that culture. It will always be alien to us. So for me, you have to be a part of that culture and experience the culture. Pastor Terence was talking about the food, saltfish, rice and peas. When I was 18, you would never get me anywhere near that stuff. It's like Indian biryani. Heaven. But until you actually taste it, you can't experience the multi-layers of that food. The culture, the music, the more I become, the day I became more diverse in my openness to different cultures was the moment that I started realizing there was another world to experience, culturally, musically, definitely in food. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when we start breaking down those walls of culture, then we can start experiencing a whole new life that will only increase
Right.
our sense of value for those people and our sense of value for, the bigger picture of life.
Right. I think pastors often ask me, how do you get the church to be multicultural? It's a very, very difficult question. I mean, we do some things intentionally, and that's where I can help sometimes. As you know, we try to put an African, a Caribbean, a white person, and an Asian in every group. We don't do it for tokenism, and we don't do it because they're that color, but we do it because of their skills, their character, their abilities. We try to do it for those sakes. But I think sometimes you have to do things intentionally to make things happen. And do I like it all, personally myself? No, I don't. But I don't choose people around me that I always like what they do, because the Bible says iron sharpens iron. And it kind of develops, People say, why did you bring him onto our team? He doesn't look like us. He doesn't sound like us. He's not one, And I said, well, that's exactly why I brought him on our team. Because there is something completely different about that person. And that person can be added value to the team, And when you get, I'm not sure about both of you, but when you get a church which has all the same leadership looking the same as each other and doing the same each other, and the styles are the same, the music styles, the preaching styles are all the same as each other, you have to rethink that, don't you? You have to think to yourself, well, how on earth are they ever going to get any other cultures into their church? So my advice is, look at your leadership, and from down, they say everything starts at the top, don't they? And then Peter's down to the bottom. That's why I like the government that we've got at the moment. You may not like the politics, but I like the multicultural side of it. The most multicultural in 100 years, we've been told, And I like that. I see the diversity, the Indians, the Africans, the Caribbeans, all as Secretary of State. And I think that's a wonderful view that we are looking at this moment in time. So just to kind of wrap up, and it's been great to be open about this subject, isn't it? If I was to first ask you, Terence, what would you see this country do now in terms of, from a Christian point of view, because we have to talk from a Christian point of view because that's who we are. What would you see us do in the next? What would you encourage people to do in the next few weeks? Would you say?
I think it's about just being open. And what is Christ's example? He spoke to so many different people, and he welcomed them. He didn't judge them, he just welcomed them, and he learnt and he spoke to them. It's like the woman at the well. Other people think, oh, I have nothing to that with that woman. But he didn't. He went to speak to even the disciples. What are you talking to her for?
You're right, yeah.
But no. And we should be able to embrace people and accept them. Yeah, with all the warts and everything. But the point is, we've been in that position.
Yeah.
So if we've been in that position and Christ has accepted us, we should be doing the same.
Most definitely.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
And it should accept them just the way they are. And once we accept them, we'll learn something about, they've got some wonderful experiences, gifts, talents.
Right.
And that's what we need to draw from that.
Right.
And it's probably some of them, it's like women. A woman's no good, they've got to be that. But once you allow them to flourish, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like I do it with young people. Find out what makes them tick.
Amen.
And start to grow, start to develop. And same with the church. You see somebody just sat there, but when you get to speak to them, wow, build their confidence up, build their self-esteem, build whatever they want to build in that person. It's only by just accepting them and receiving them, allowing them to grow and explore.
Amen. What about you, Anthony?
The Black Lives Matter logo has been I Can't Breathe. And during this time, I think we, as a nation, from whatever background we come from, we need to take a breath.
Mm, mm.
We need to take stock
Yeah.
of what's happening. We
Yeah.
need to cut off all the media hype. We need to dial down the temperature,
Right.
and we need to look at this seriously. If we just carry on the way we are and attacking one another on social media, in the news, in the media, we're just going to bring this up further, dial it up, and we're going to have a meltdown in culture and society.
Right. Right.
Jesus told us that the greatest command is love. It's not about legislation. It's not about more government plans. It's not about more stuff to bring in to legislate against racism. It's having a heart of love
Yes. Yes.
to bring about a change within us first, which will then change society.
Yeah.
Jesus told us to love one another, to love God,
Yes.
and then love our neighbours. Love God first, and secondly, love our neighbour as ourselves. That puts us third.
Yeah.
God first, neighbour second,
Yeah.
us third.
Right.
When we do that, this society can change. Not through legislation, not through more government paper, but through a love for one another.
Amen. Amen. I think the scripture comes to me is one in Acts 10, and the other one is in Galatians chapter 2 for me. In Acts 10, there's Peter there. He's praying, doing the holy and the spiritual thing. He's up there, in his secret place, and then God gives him this vision, a vision that goes totally against the grain of his heritage, and animals coming down, on a sheet of, and you look at that and you think to yourself, isn't God universal? Isn't God all-inclusive? Because he shows this vision, and it's an incredible vision. And then, he says to Peter, Peter, what you're calling unclean, I'm calling clean. And I think there are people out there that we are saying, that are unclean, that we should be calling clean. No matter what, we shouldn't have the prejudices, racialism, or anything is involved. That's what he says. And when I grasp that part of Scripture, it's almost like God saying, Peter, this is what I say. I don't care how you feel. This is what I say. But then we go into Galatians chapter 2, and you see that where Peter's sitting amongst the Gentiles, and this is with the Gentiles, and then he walks away. Now, he's the pulpit man. He's the leader. And he walks away. And so everybody else walks away with him. Even Barnabas, who was brought up as a Gentile, walks away. So it's funny how racism can take a good man and make him a bad man. And how people can follow the crowd. And as Christians today, I'm saying this to everybody here. We in City Life, Sheffield, we are against racism. We are against any type of prejudice if it brings hatred as well. And we are into all-inclusive, multicultural church. And we love what we are. We love identity. I love Terence, who's Caribbean black. I love Anthony, who's British white. And I love myself as a mixed race, from all different European countries, Asian countries also. So we embrace that in this church. And we need to embrace people out there. And we need to just carry on, as Anthony and Terence have said, we need to carry on loving one another as we love ourselves. I pray this has opened your eyes, that it's possible to have leaders of different cultures getting on with each other and moving forward. We are not perfect, and Jesus said, be as perfect as my Father is perfect in heaven. So we can try to sanctify ourselves and be as holy as we can be on this earth, because one day we'll be answerable to heaven. And let me tell you about the book of Revelations. It talks about every tribe, and it talks about every nation. So the question I like to ask you guys, and I'm not going to ask you to answer it, but I will answer it for you, is that even if we get back, but even when we go to heaven, we'll still keep the identity of who we are, because it talks about every tribe, and it talks about every nation. So we don't lose our cultural identity. We hold on to that. But we become newly born Christians, new bodies, new earth, and so forth. So bless you. I hope you've enjoyed this program today. And we'll say goodbye. Anthony, would you like to say goodbye?
God bless you guys.
Yeah.
May God be with you.
And Pastor Terence.
Bless you too. Shalom.
Yeah. And bless you guys, and we'll see you soon. Amen.